Hello and welcome to the channel. In today's video, I'm going to be talking about how to stop being a victim of your life and of your life circumstances. This is such an issue for so many of us, right? For so many people. And the underlying cause of this is all has to do with the way that we think, right? The way that we perceive life and the way that we perceive our circumstances. So I just want to kind of clarify today how you can look at things differently so that you're not sort of stuck in this mental loop, in this insanity, if you will, that we create in our own heads when it comes to really anything and everything, right? When it comes to changing our circumstances. So victim mentality is actually very subtle. I think a lot of people don't even realize how much they're in victim mentality. And it takes a lot of different forms. So I'll provide a ton of examples for the different ways that you may be thinking that is very much victim mentality. And it really, really connects to powerlessness and fear. So those are the two main components of being a victim, right? You feel powerless to change certain things, and there's always underlying fear associated with it. So and a lot of independent people actually have victim mentality that will not necessarily recognize it as such, particularly because they think like if I'm, taking care of myself, if I'm able to, um, you know, uh, survive and like meet my own financial needs and like I have a place to live and I have a good job, then I'm not a victim of my life circumstances and I'm not a victim with anything, then I'm good. But that's not actually the case. So just because you don't necessarily depend on anybody for survival, it doesn't mean that you're not still thinking in a victim mentality. Because there's just so much more to it than that. So victim mentality is choosing consciously or unconsciously to be in the lousy job, to be in a relationship that you don't like, to put up with somebody's, mistreatment or whatever, fill in the blank, like destructive relationships. Those are all a choice. It's a choice to be in those situations, right? Even like, for example, to let your kid drive you crazy. That's actually victim mentality as well. You're consciously or unconsciously choosing to let them drive you crazy, or to sabotage anything good in your life. So, for example, I was watching something over the weekend, and there was a guy that was in court, and the judge had said to this guy, and he was a young guy, that he was going to be getting 30 days in jail for whatever crime he had committed. And the guy got pissed about that, and then he said, "F you" to the judge. Well, guess what? The judge was like, "I'm sorry, what?" And he's like, "Okay, so now it's 60 days. And the guy was just like, he just wouldn't stop. He said it again. He said, well, fuck you. And he just kept like flipping off the judge, and he just kept saying it. And every single time he said it, the judge was adding an additional 30 days to his sentence. So by the end of it, he was up to like, I don't know, 120 days or whatever. It was crazy. And I just identified that as such a self-sabotage moment. That guy was doing that because he was actually pissed at himself. He wasn't upset with the judge for giving him 30 days. He was mad at himself for messing up to begin with that brought him to court, right? So we all do this. Like we get really, really hard on ourselves when we mess up, and we just think that that's okay to do. But that's actually also part of victim mentality, right? That's a lack of compassion and love for yourself because you messed up. It's like that's not a way to learn. That's not how you're going to learn or understand how to do something better, by beating yourself up over something that you did that didn't work out. So it's important to understand that we are always the cause of all of our experiences, right, in life, meaning that you are the cause of your reactions to everything that happens to you. So how you choose to react to something or to your mess ups or whatever is your choice. And that's where you can pull yourself out of victimhood. If you realize that you have an option to react differently to it. Had he kept his mouth shut and apologized and said to the judge, I'm sorry I was stupid. I shouldn't have done that, blah, blah, blah. He would have gotten 30 days and that would have been it. But instead he kept going and ended up really creating a long sentence for himself, right? And it was so unnecessary. And that was just because he couldn't love himself. He couldn't realize that, like, okay, if I don't shut my mouth, like, I'm going to keep adding more and more, and I'm just going to keep screwing myself over more and more, right? So we are always responsible. And this is something I've become aware of in my own life, that I am responsible for how I choose to respond to the things that I experience on a daily basis, right? If there's something I experience that I don't want to be experiencing, I can't blame that on anyone else, how I choose to respond to that or react to that, right? So, and there's going to be lots more examples that I can bring up. And actually, as a positive example, there was another video that I watched, and that was about people losing a loved one. And so, there were so many people that were interviewed, and unfortunately, a lot of these were parents that had lost a child. And, the one woman who had lost her 24-year-old son, she was just, super devastated. And I could tell she was extremely in victim mode about it, right? It was just, why did this happen? And it's not fair and all this stuff, right? And then there was another woman that was interviewed, and she had lost her 33-year-old son to drunk driving. And this woman's response was just like, blew my mind, and actually really inspired me to make this video today, because it helped me to understand and realize how much control we really have with our choices. And you know what this woman said about losing her son? She said, at least I had him for 33 years. At least I got to experience him and enjoy him for 33 years. And that was really mind-blowing. Like, she could have been a victim. She could have been so angry with the drunk driver, who had killed her son, but that wasn't what she chose. She chose to respond and to react to this situation differently. And it's not to say that she didn't go through her mourning process. I'm sure she did. But at the point when they were doing the interview, and you could tell, like, she wasn't faking it. She was truly at peace. And she really had come to terms and had accepted that she had lost her son, but she wasn't necessarily looking at it as a loss. She was looking at it as, at least I got to enjoy him for 33 years. So I just thought that was really beautiful. And I wanted to share that as an example for this video. So whenever you don't take responsibility, you put yourself in a position of pain, therefore decrease your ability to handle the fear that is in your life. And that's really what it comes down to, right? We actually weaken ourselves when we become victims, and we create more fear and actually add to the fear in our lives. So that's really important to consider. So I want to talk about 7 definitions of taking responsibility, and like 7 different ways that you can look at taking responsibility for your own life. Because let's face it, I think this is something that we all hear all the time, take responsibility for your life, stop being such a victim. Yeah, but it's like, how do you do that? How do you not become a victim and truly take responsibility in a way that is for real, where you're not faking, where you're really able to move past that victim mentality? So, number 1, and you might want to take notes on this, but number 1 is, taking responsibility means never blaming anyone else for anything you are, being, doing, having, or feeling. Never. Okay, we don't blame others for how we feel, because nobody makes you feel a certain way. You feel a certain way because you choose to feel that way. Nobody controls your feelings, literally. And this was something that I had to really understand myself and really move through this concept and sort of digest it so that I can get out of my own victim mentality, right? So you and no one else but you create what goes on in your head, right? Only you decide what you're thinking. Nobody can decide the thoughts for you. So as an example here, like if somebody was in a difficult marriage, because I hear this often. So if somebody was in a difficult marriage, and women will often say to me, like, it's his fault that, we had such a miserable marriage for 30 years. But then I'll say to them, like, okay, but why didn't you choose to leave? Right? It's like you made certain choices that kept you in that perpetuating situation for 30 years. Right? So it's like you have to take accountability for that. You have to take accountability for the choices that you made during that time, and for your lack of flexibility, for your unwillingness to budge, for your unwillingness to get out of your own comfort zone, right? Because comfort zones, I talked about this in previous videos, are oftentimes very uncomfortable, and yet we choose to stay in them because they are so familiar. So recognize your own comfort zone and see, what is familiar to me right now? What am I used to? And what's sort of on loop in my life that I do over and over because I'm just so comfortable doing it? It's like I don't even know anything else, or I don't know how to experience anything else. So the questions that I would ask someone who stays in a relationship that they're unhappy with would be, number one, that I already said, why did you choose to stay? Why didn't you notice any of the nice things that he did? Because we have to be honest, there are positive things people do also, but sometimes we get extremely fixated on the negative things that people do only. And then those are the only things that our brain literally looks for continuously, is just the negatives, right? And we fail to see the positives. Another example would be like kids, right? Like, it's my kid's fault that I'm going gray. And that's something too I'll hear from parents sometimes, like, oh, these kids are driving me crazy or whatever, right? But the question there then would be, why do you think that your child has to be a certain way? Why can't you accept your child as they are? Why can't you allow them to find their own way? Why do you always insist on rescuing them and saving them from the messes that they create for themselves? Right? So again, it's like just a different perspective. It's a different way of looking at how you are processing information, your experiences, and then how you're reacting to them. Excuse me. It's very important, especially as a parent, I've come to understand it's very, very important for us to just allow our children to be who they are, right? True unconditional love means that you allow a person to be who they are, and you don't judge them because they're making mistakes, because you got to remind yourself, you also make mistakes constantly, right? So, and you also have to allow your children to take responsibility, right? There should be consequences for their actions. So if you're always picking up those pieces for them, they're never going to learn, right? You yourself have to learn to take responsibility, which is what today's video is about. And then once you understand these concepts and you can start to apply them in your life, then now you can teach your children also how to take responsibility for their things in life. So number 2, taking responsibility means not blaming yourself. And hear me out on this one, because I know it sounds a little bit of like a contradiction to what I just said. So anything that takes away your power or pleasure makes you a victim. Okay? Don't make yourself a victim of yourself. So remember earlier I mentioned the guy in court and how he kept screwing himself over. So once you become aware you have created so much of your own unhappiness, you may have a tendency to punish yourself and put yourself down. And that's exactly what that guy in court was doing. He was punishing himself for, messing up, for making a mistake. And then he kept adding more and more and more punishment. Like, it was really showing me how much this guy was just upset with himself, actually, right, for messing up. And he even said it in court. He's like, I'm just a fuck up. Like, so it was very obvious that he wasn't viewing his mistakes as opportunities to learn. He was viewing them as something terrible and negative, and that he should have known better. But you don't know what you don't know, right? And that's something that we have to keep in mind. I remind myself of that all the time. So, oftentimes the brain actually will say to you in these situations, when you do mess up or you do something that you afterwards realize like maybe you shouldn't have, is like, there I am messing up my life again. Like, I'm hopeless. Like, when will I ever learn? And like, I'm such a loser, right? Like, our thoughts will go down these tracks. And it's really, really important to stop that and to realize like, that's not okay. That's actually self-abuse. Like, you wouldn't really tolerate that from somebody else. So why would you tolerate it from yourself, right? Like, you wouldn't be okay with it, hearing it from somebody else. None of us usually are. Even if we're hard on ourselves, if somebody else says it to us, we're like right up in their face about it, right? So, and that's actually not taking responsibility. When you're hard on yourself like that, you're not taking responsibility. So remind yourself that you're doing the best you can for what you know in any given moment, and that it's all a part of the learning process of moving yourself from pain to power. This is how we learn, okay? It's something we have to accept. So being patient with ourselves is really, really important for this learning journey, because your entire life is a learning journey. You're going to spend your entire life learning and making mistakes and learning from them and making mistakes and learning from them. And then eventually you're going to move to this place of power instead of pain within yourself. And you're going to start to realize like, man, I have so much wisdom under my belt from all of the times that I've messed up, from all of the mistakes that I've made, that I really now have a much clearer understanding of how to do life in a more balanced and harmonious way. So it's all good. It's all good. The path toward greater self-fulfillment is a lengthy process. Keep that in mind. Like I said, you will learn till the day you die. So, and it's all trial and error, right? It's the only way that we're going to learn. You try stuff. Did it work? Did it not work? Right? That's the only way. So now, number 3, taking responsibility means being aware of where and when you are not taking responsibility so that you can eventually change, because we're all moving through a process of change. There's really only one person in the world who can make you happy, and that's you. That's it, period. Everything else from the outside is just a choice of how you respond to that person, that stimulus, that whatever situation. But at the end of the day, we actually have to take responsibility for making ourselves happy, always. So when you get into blame mode, ask yourself these questions. What am I not doing in my life that I could be doing that I'm blaming someone else for not doing for me? Okay, so for example, your husband. Say you want your husband to do certain things and then you're upset with them because they're not doing it. And there's always like an underlying reason why you're actually upset with your husband. It's not because they're not doing the thing that you want them to do. It's because there's something within you that it's something that you're not doing for yourself. Okay. And again, hear me out on this one as we go through. It'll make sense. So you got to tune in to yourself. Okay. Tune into what that is. So what am I doing in my life that I could be doing that I'm blaming others for? Okay. Are you being obsessive about money or feeling insecure perhaps? Are you not creating enough activity for yourself? So if you're bored and blaming other people for your boredom, then maybe you're just not actually creating enough activity in your own life. And it's not really somebody else's job to curb your boredom. It's yours. You have to figure out what extra things you could do or what fun things you could do to pull you out of that boredom, right? Are you expecting someone to make something you're not handling better for yourself? I think I'm missing a word there. Something's a little off with that one. But moving on, once you realize what you're doing, you can start correcting it. And that's extremely, extremely important. So awareness, and I always tell people this, awareness is like the number one most important thing. The more aware you become of what you are doing, that it isn't working for you, the more opportunity you're giving yourself to correct that, right? So one clue that you're truly taking responsibility is when you feel little or no anger toward others. And that took me a moment to sort of assimilate within myself. But now I've come to understand, once you get to that place and reach that within yourself, that you're not triggered, you're not being upset by other people, that's when you realize that you've really started to take control of your own personal power, and that you're actually moving from pain to power, okay? Because you're not getting triggered. Nothing is the other person's fault when you realize that everyone is doing the best they can for what they know and for the level of consciousness that they're at and the level of personal growth that they're at. And I explain this to people all the time. Like, once I understood that certain people treated me the way they did because they were lacking a level of consciousness that I was expecting them to have, I was really able to let go of that anger or that frustration. Like, it really helped me to heal. It really helped me to understand that, they were just kind of doing the best they could, and that's it. Like, I can't have expectation for someone when they are who they are, right? My expectation always creates disappointment. So toss expectation out the window, especially when it comes to others. So some clues, and here's some key words here to consider, okay? So some clues that you're not taking responsibility would be: you feel angry, you get upset, you blame others, you're in pain, you're lacking focus, you're in self-pity, having your own little personal pity party, you're envious, you feel helpless, you are in a constant state of limbo, you are impatient, you are joyless, you are fatigued and tired, you're attempting to control others, you're obsessive, you have addictions, you are very judgmental, you often get disappointed, and you get jealous. These are all very clear indications that you are not taking control, you're not in your power, and that you are in victim mode, essentially. You are not taking responsibility. So when you feel any of these feelings, determine what you're doing that's causing you to feel this way and causing you to actually dodge responsibility, right? Because these are all things that you can change. These are all feelings that you don't have to be feeling if you choose to do something about the things that are causing these feelings within you, right? There's so much power in choice. So much, I can't even reiterate. So moving on to number 4. Number 4 is taking responsibility means handling the chatterbox, okay? This is the chatterbox. So there's a little voice inside all of us that is constantly chirping, right? From the moment you wake up, is constantly chirping, usually driving us crazy, and succeeding in convincing us of its own narrative, right? So if you choose, once again, choice, if you choose to listen to the little voice in your head, that little voice 9 times out of 10 is going to be very pessimistic, negative, and will have very negative things to say, and usually will want to put you down. So if you choose to listen to that, then you are going to really start to believe the narrative that it's spewing at you. And, they're lies. Those thoughts are oftentimes lies. So this little voice actually holds the key to all of your fears. Everything negative that the little voice in your head is saying, again, 9 times out of 10, it's negative, right? And all those negative things that it's saying really connect to the underlying fears that you have. So think about that for a moment. It usually proclaims doom, lack, and loss, right? Those are the things that it loves obsessing over. And the reason why you distract yourself and you don't like to be alone oftentimes, and I know lots of people do this, including myself sometimes, we have a hard time being with ourselves because this starts to go off when you're by yourself if you don't know how to control it. And you'll just hearing it will be so insanity driven that you're just going to want to scroll, you're going to want to put on a movie, you're going to want to do anything and everything just to avoid to not have to hear it, right? So, but that's running, that's not taking responsibility. So keep that in mind. Because, we all want to escape insanity. So the chatterbox always makes you a victim. So commit yourself to replacing it with a loving voice. Very, very important. And I've been working on this and I've been doing this, and it's really working out well for me, actually. The more that I convert those thoughts and say, no, not today, Satan, and I just focus on the positive and on loving thoughts for myself, the more that I can feel it elevating my vibration. I can feel it putting me into a natural state of joy and happiness and contentment. And it actually puts me in a state where I don't feel lack. And that in itself is beautiful. So, and think of this too for a moment. You wouldn't want to hang out with people or friends that are negative and always have something doomsday-ish, right, to say, or something that puts you down. So then don't hang out with that negative chatterbox in your head that is also constantly putting you down. And, this is when we have to come to the understanding that we are truly our worst enemy. And when you think of that thought, it makes a lot of sense. We are, because nobody else can control your thoughts but you, no one else. So don't be your worst enemy. Okay, moving on to number 5. Taking responsibility means being aware of payoffs that keep you stuck. And this was a juicy one when I was really thinking about this one and making my notes. Payoffs are like what you get out of being in the comfort zone or being stuck in that negative thinking and listening to the chatterbox. Okay, what are the payoffs from that? So payoffs explain why you choose to perpetuate what you don't want in your life, okay? These are like your excuses, if you will. So I'm going to give you an example. There's a person that hates their job, okay? We'll call her Jean. Jean hates her job. Her chatterbox always says, oh, poor Jean, and if the market was better, I could get a better job, and if I had a master's degree, I would be in a higher paying job or whatever, fill in the blank, right? So there's all these victim modes and what if kind of thoughts that Jean has about her job, okay? This is her comfort zone. This is where Jean actually feels most comfortable. So the payoffs for Jean from thinking like this are, number one is she doesn't have to face possible rejection if she were to go out and look for another job. Okay, that's a payoff. And that's a reason why she keeps perpetuating the shitty job and complaining about it, because then that way at least she's safe from possible rejection. She doesn't have to question her competence because she already knows what she's doing in this job. It's relatively easy. She's capable of doing it. So she knows that, I'm competent for this job, but however, if I wanted to like maybe upgrade or do something different, what if I can't do it? There's the what if coming in. So another payoff to staying in the job she doesn't like is that she feels competent and doesn't really have to strive to be any more knowledgeable. And another thing would be that once she puts in her hours for the day, then she doesn't have to put in any additional energy. Maybe the job, once it's like her 9 to 5 is done, then she's done for the day. There's no emails, no phone calls, no nothing else that she has to worry about. So these are like payoffs that we will often convince ourselves that are positive payoffs and will stay stagnant in certain situations because it's just easier, and the mind convinces us that, well, but at least I don't have to do anything else after work, right? So now Jean has 3 choices here with this job, okay? Choice number 1 would be stay where you are, obviously, keep complaining, don't change anything, and status quo. Option number 2, or choice number 2, she can stay where she is, start perceiving the job from a higher perspective with more gratitude and really start focusing on loving that job and saying, you know what, I actually love that I don't have to do anything else after work. And, maybe the pay isn't exactly what I want, or I would love to have more of a pay, but the pay is comfortable. It provides me what I need, things like that, right? Or choice number 3, she says, forget all of that. The job overall really doesn't make me happy. It doesn't tick the boxes that I would like it to. So I'm just going to go ahead and look for a new job altogether. These are her three choices. Look for something that's more satisfying, right? Has the pay, has whatever else that she desires. So I'm using this as an example to help you realize that there's always several ways to look at any situation, right? I just used a job here as an example. This could be related to a relationship. It could be anything else. So just know that you always have choices. Stay where you are, keep being miserable, keep doing what you're doing, same old, you know, have a completely different, stay where you are, but have a completely different perspective about it, a more elevated perspective. Or if you don't like either of those options and you say, no, like I'm really desperate at this point, Kat, I'd like to change, I really want to change, then you choose to change and do something different altogether. And the choice is always yours. That's the beauty of life. Okay, point number 6. Taking responsibility means figuring out what you want in life and acting on it. Okay, I could use myself here as an example for this because it's a choice I made. So when I ran my clinic for 10 years, I knew it was soul sucking. I knew it didn't give me the satisfaction. Probably about 4 years in, it really started to, the satisfaction was really disappearing. Excuse me. All right. The satisfaction really started to wear off for me. And I simply had to make a choice, right? I could stay where I am, keep doing what I am. And I did actually make that choice because when my lease came up for renewal 4 years in, I decided to renew for like another 4 years. So that was a choice that I made. And then I realized once I made that choice that I was like, yeah, that's actually really not what I wanted. So taking responsibility really means that you figure out what you want in life. And I had to go through that process to figure out that I actually really want to work from home. I don't want to commute. I want to have super flexible hours. I want to make my own hours. I don't want to be tied to a physical location. I don't want to have the kind of overhead I was having. Like there was a lot of things I had to think through to help me come to the place where I had a very clear idea of what I truly wanted, and then take action on what I truly wanted, like started putting some action steps into motion. So set your goals and work toward them. Very simple. It's like sculpt your life, okay? Create a life for yourself because you can, that really truly works for you. And you're going to know what works for you because you already know what doesn't work for you. All the things that you've tried so far that didn't work for you gives you actually clarity to know what is going to, or what you would like to try next. That is very different from what you've experienced before. So an example that I wrote down here actually is figuring out what kind of space you want to live in. For example, someone mentioned to me, a client just recently, that they weren't necessarily happy with the place that they were living in, and like there was just a lot of stuff everywhere, and they really needed to like purge and like do different stuff. They weren't happy overall in their home, and I said to her, I said, the most simple thing that you can do is just like figure out what you don't like about it. Once you have clarity on what you don't like about it, start changing it, right? Start going through this process of purging, getting rid of things. And creating a peaceful, loving sanctuary for yourself actually doesn't have to cost a fortune. It really doesn't. As a matter of fact, the less stuff you have, the better you're going to feel in your home, because it's not materialistic things that make us happy. It's how that space feels to you, right? And how warm and inviting it is. So that's what you can focus on there. Or another example would be like friends, right? If you want to have like a really good circle of friends, then decide in your mind like what kind of friends you would like to have, or who you would like in your friend circle. If you know acquaintances or just people that you've met that you were like really vibing with, really digging, then pick up the phone and call them, right? Reach out to them. Don't wait for them to call you. Reach out to them and see if you can set up a date to go, meet up and hang out and do stuff together, right? Like if you don't take action, then you can't expect somebody else to take action. right? Be willing to step outside of your comfort zone and make that change so that you can experience something different. And I want to just say here too, like, don't waste time. I find time to be so precious, and it really goes fast. If you think about it, my God, we're already at the end of 2023, right? We're almost done this year. Like, it's crazy. We're 3-4 months away from finishing the year. So wasting time and waiting for like the perfect moment or the perfect mate or the perfect job and like the perfect friends to come along is actually an illusion, right? It's completely a lie again that the chatterbox feeds in your mind, and it's not true. So be willing to step out of your comfort zone and make some changes. Go after things to give yourself an opportunity. Commit to what you want, set clear goals, and then take action. It's really that simple. We all overcomplicate, overthink, overanalyze everything. We need to stop that. Okay, number 7, the last point here is taking responsibility means being aware of the multitude of choices that you have in any given situation. So think about it this way. From the time that you wake up in the morning, okay, your alarm goes off, your chatterbox kind of starts up, right? Right away, you start having thoughts. So you get to choose from that point, from that moment on, how the entire day is going to go. Literally in the morning, first thing in the first 5 minutes that you are awake, you get to decide how the morning is going to go. And don't get me wrong here. Sometimes we have unexpected and unforeseen circumstances or situations that happen. But even still, it doesn't matter actually, because how you choose to respond to that or how you choose to look at it is really going to determine your happiness or your lack of happiness in that moment, right? We are always living moment to moment. So, for example, like, it's your choice whether you're going to lie in bed and think, oh my God, I don't want to go to work, or give yourself a positive self-talk and look forward to the coming day and just say, you know what, I'm just going to do the best I can. And we'll see how the day goes. It's your choice to, for example, worry about your body and not being in shape. And this is something I used to do. And, you can sit there and beat yourself up and look in the mirror in the morning when you're heading into the shower and be like, oh my God, I'm fat, or I'm out of shape, or I'm this, or I'm that. Or you can say, you know what, I'm not exactly where I want to be, but I'm working towards that. And, I'm going to just take small steps each day to move towards, because I'm in the process of creating a great body for myself. So that attitude shift is immediately felt actually by your entire physicality. The whole day is up to you, because at every moment you are choosing how you feel. And only you can choose that. Nobody else can choose it for you. So when difficult situations come, say to yourself, okay, this is what I'm dealing with. Choose. Choose. How are you going to think about this? How are you going to approach it? How are you going to perceive it? Are you going to be miserable about or about it, or are you going to be content? Are you going to accept the situation for what it is, or are you going to sit there and be upset because you want to control it and change it and you can't? Are you going to visualize scarcity or abundance? That's a choice, right? So one last example I want to use here is going on a trip. Okay, say you go to California or you go somewhere hot, tropical, and you're really looking forward to it. You're really, really expecting it to be like hot, sunny, right, the whole time. And maybe out of the 7 days that you booked, 5 of it, like, it rains, right? And you're not getting the weather that you were hoping for and expecting. Now, you have a choice with that as well. You can control the weather, you know that, but you can control how you're going to respond to it. So you can say, you know what? I'm still going to make the most of this weather. I'm going to see, or this vacation, I'm going to see what else I can explore, what kind of stuff I can do, indoors or whatever. and really just focus on having fun and having a good time, because I'm here to rest. I'm here to turn my mind off. I'm here to really have a good time. So you can choose to look at it that way, or you can spend your entire vacation, the whole 7 days, bitching about the 5 days of rain that you had. Like, everything is a choice, right? So I'm going to leave you with these 2 final thoughts here. Understanding the things that you can take responsibility for, and this way of thinking really doesn't excuse others for mistreating you, or for like inappropriate behavior. So that's just something I want you guys to keep in mind. It's never okay for someone to be disrespectful or to treat you inappropriately. That's not what I'm saying with any of this. This is just how you choose to feel about it. And it's still very, very important to have boundaries and to know your limits and to make sure that you don't allow others to take advantage of you. Okay? And the final thing I want to say is that remember and keep this in mind, okay, that fully taking responsibility for your life is a long process. It is going to take time, and it may take your entire lifetime. But because of that, it really truly requires patience. It requires patience and self-love. Okay, so don't beat yourself up and don't be hard on yourself for the things that you're messing up in life. And instead, just realize that I'm moving through a process of learning, of growing, of becoming a much more empowered version of myself. And with each experience, with each difficulty that I move through, I'm becoming this higher version of myself. So because of that, it's all okay. So that is the last thought I wanted to leave you guys with, and just really encourage you to keep moving on this path of self-growth and personal growth, and really love yourself through all of it, and just know that it's all okay, and that tomorrow is always a new day. So thank you so much for watching, especially if you made it all the way through. I hope you took some notes, and I hope you're going to start implementing this new perception about the way that you can handle situations, particularly difficult situations. And I hope that you do really, really well with it. So take care. Excuse me. Thanks so much for watching. Do hit a like on your way out. Subscribe to the channel if you like this kind of stuff. And I will definitely see you all in the next one. Take care.